Solid bags play a huge part in my angling and they have for many years. Now, I've chopped and changed between many rig presentations over the course of that time until I finally got into this one. So it's a slip D rig. I'll talk you through why I use it first and what the components are. So at the business end there, I've got a small mainline baits pepper peach pastel wafter as a hook bait. I've got a mini hook ring swivel and that's mounted onto the D section. It's an apex size 4 curve hook, a hook that's really strong, really reliable, and it's never ever let me down so far. I've got a small curve kicker on there just to help the hook turn and obviously to cover that knot. I've got probably 4 inches there of the 25-pound silk flex braid, nice and supple, no coating, fits perfectly inside a solid bag. I've got figure of 8 loop knot so I can just loop to loop my rigs on, size 8 flexi ring swivel, and then going up from there I've got a 3-ounce alpha leads flat pair inline, a small tail rubber and a short length of the 50-pound Sub-Zero lead-free leader, just so I can either loop to loop my rigs on or tie them up in advance. So that's the rig. Now what I'm going to do is show you exactly how I tie it. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how I tie my slip D rig from a solid bag. So first of all, you need to take your chosen hook link, and I choose a 25-pound silk flex braid. Lovely uncoated braid, nice and supple, that goes well inside a solid bag. So what you need to do is cut off a decent length. Don't leave yourself short because there's nothing worse than not having enough material to have the right length of rig at the end. So I've cut off a nice length of material, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double the material back on itself and just pinch it right on the end. I'm then going to take a mini hook ring swivel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the braid through the big eye on the swivel, like so. Making sure you still trap that braid in place. You're then going to take your chosen pattern of hook. So in this occasion, it's a size 4 apex curve. These hooks are ridiculously sharp, super strong, and they served me well for a long time now. So don't fix it if it's not broken. Take one of your hooks out of the pack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the point of the hook through the loop and then carefully just twist and pinch the loop in place. Slide the swivel down and pinch the eye of your hook, and that's going to form the D section of your rig. Now the next bit is pretty crucial from my point of view. I want the end of the D opposite the barb of the hook. You don't want it any further around the shank. The further around the shank it goes, the worse the hook holds are going to be, and I'll show you for why at the end why that is. If anything, you want it opposite the barb or further up towards the eye of the hook. So I'm going to make sure that D is opposite the barb and pinch. So you should be left with 2 tag ends. The longer end is going to be your hook link, and then a tag end that eventually you're going to get rid of anyway. So I'm going to place the tag end first through the back of the eye of the hook, and at this point I just pull that out of the way just so I can get, and it's easier, for the second bit of braid to go through the back of the eye of the hook again. Always through the back of the eye, that's really important. Pull it down. So now you've got your hook link and the tag end through the eye. What I'm going to do is just form a simple knotless knot. I like to go down probably 6 or 7 times and then back over the top a couple of times, like so. Again, just pull that tag end out of the way. Take your rig section, place it through the back of the eye again one last time and pull down nice and tight. So what you've got now is you've got your rig and you've got a loose tag end. I'm just going to moisten that, use a little multi-tool and just bed that knot down nice and tight. The reason I've gone back over that knot, so I've gone 6 or 7 down and a couple of times back over the top, is just so it secures it nicely in place. The last thing you want is that braid slipping during the fight, which can cause a cut off. So there we go. What I'm going to do now is pull your hook link out of the way, and when you get rid of that tag end as close to the eye of the hook as you can. Now if you wanted to, that rig's absolutely perfectly fine to use at that point, but I've got massive OCD, so what I want to do is just cover that little knot up where I've took the tag end off and just protect the knot. So to do that, I take one of our little medium curve kickers. These are absolutely brilliant. I used to do this with shrink tube, but a lot of the fishing to do down these open access venues, I need rods in the water for the most amount of time, so I need everything to be quick. So it saves me steaming shrink tube down. So I'll just pull that kicker down, put it through the big head first, and just slide that over the knot, just covering the knot, doesn't have to go any further down. Make sure the curve is coming in, and make sure that D is level. So you can see how the D is still opposite the barb. Nice curve kicker on there, and all that kicker is going to aid is every time that pulls down now, that's wanting to turn. Like I've already mentioned, the hook to landfish ratio on this rig is really, really good. So in terms of my bag rig, I've seen a lot of carp in the edge feeding on my bags before, and when I was using sort of 2.5 to 3 inch hook links, it was fine for sort of your smaller stamper fish, so your little commons or your little mirrors come flying in, they take the lot and off they go. I have noticed and witnessed bigger fish feeding slightly slower and further back, and what I did was actually lengthen my rig to between 4.5 and 5.5 inches, and I started getting better hook holds with the bigger fish. And if I hadn't seen that in the edge, I wouldn't have done that, but a slightly longer hook link than what most people would probably use inside the solid bags. So if we go for 4.5, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to double the braid back on itself and form a figure of 8 loop, just so I can loop my rigs on. So I'm going to make a loop, I'm going to twist that loop, and then to make it easier for myself, I'm going to take a little splicing needle or a little one that's got a latch on it, and I'm going to pull the braid through. So you can see how it's formed a figure of 8. Put a bit of moisture on it, pull it down nice and tight. Now, you don't have to make this knot small, nothing's going to cover it. In fact, the bigger the better, because if you mount your hook bait when you've made loads of rigs ready, it means that you can fit your hook bait and your hook through that loop. So it doesn't have to be really small. Little multi-tool again, put it down nice and tight. Make sure the knot's really bedded down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some scissors and just trim off that tag end. So now we're getting there. A rig of about 4.5 inches. Lovely. One last little thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook my multi-tool through the rig, and I'm going to get some putty. Now what I'm going to do with this putty is I'm not going to mould it conventionally around the hook link and keep it on there, but what I am going to do is I'm going to mould it around and rub it up and down the hook link material. So basically the putty weaves into the braid. So you've got to imagine this soft, well, any braid that's sort of soft and not got a coating on it, when that's going into a bag, it's naturally going in dry so it doesn't melt the PVA. But when that goes into the water and your bag sinks and melts, the first thing that water's going to do is attack that PVA, and it can sometimes cause braids to sort of lift up, which obviously you don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really rub the footy up and down the braid, like so. What I don't want to do is leave a blob of putty on there, because obviously when I mould my bag and try and compact it, I don't want pellets and whatever bag contents I've got in there sticking to that putty. But I'm sure we'll do a close-up. If you can see that, that braid has now got the putty weaved into it. So at all times now, that is going to be sunk and laid on the deck and not have a chance to kick up. So that's the rig. Brilliant little rig. What I'm going to do to finish off, I'm going to take one of these mainline baits peppered peach pastel wafters. I'll just go through lengthways, OCD again, make sure it goes directly in the centre. Take some floss, and then you're going to take your floss and you're going to put it through the little eye on the swivel and double it back on itself. Take your needle, put the latch over, slide your hook bait down. Now when I'm going to do this, I'm not going to slide it all the way and cover that swivel up. I'm just going to slide it down just so it covers the barrel. If you pull it all the way down, you sort of stop it from having that 360 movement. So at this point, you can either trim it off and I'm going to blob it, or you can add a little hair stop to it if you're worried about the bait coming off. I just tend to use a little windproof lighter and blob it down. Nice little small knot. Don't worry about that too much. And that is the finished rig. Absolutely deadly. Like I said, I've used it for a good few years now. Many rigs before this I've tried inside solid bags. I've had nothing, I've either been done, or I've had hook pulls, or I've landed fish and the hooks come out in the net. I moved over to this probably a couple of years ago, and I'll be honest with you, I've never looked back. Yes, you're still going to get hook pulls. I'm not saying the rig doesn't get done out there, but from what I've seen in the carp in the edge, and the hook holds I've had, I've got maximum amount of confidence in this rig, and that's what it's about. So I'm sure if you give it a go, it'll put more fish on the bank for you as well. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about how important it was to have the D opposite the barb and no further round, and this is the reason why. So if you imagine this is on the lake bed and Mr. Carp comes along, look where that hook's dropping. Whichever way that hook lays, that hook is pointing down, ready to catch the bottom lip every single time, no matter which way that hook actually lands inside the bag. So number one, that reason is for where the D is, and number two, you've got that size 8 flexor ring swivel there as well, so you've got maximum movement. What you would have if the D was further round is the hook would start to come up at all sorts of different angles, so it wouldn't be facing like you get them to the side like that, or sort of upwards like that, just because of the angle of that D. And obviously that's where you're going to start to sort of get hook hold, dodgy hook holds or hook pulls, or the hook coming out of the net because you're catching them in all sorts of different angles. So you always want that hook to be face down, proud, ready to catch the bottom lip.